A universal experience that many men have when sitting in class or at a boring office job is to imagine themselves in an active combat zone. They hold the line against all odds while their friends and loved ones make it to safety. Eventually, they're struck down and they bleed out in a cinematic fashion. But none of us are actually crazy enough to do that, right? Well, for one man, this daydream became a reality. Today, we're talking about Koshiro Tanaka, the samurai of Afghanistan. Hi, I'm Crate13, and I don't wear pants when I record these videos. But let's find out why Koshiro traded his katana for Kalashnikov. Not much is publicly known about Tanaka's early life. He was born in 1940 in Japan, and his early childhood would have been filled with memories of occupied Japan. It was here, as a young boy, he would find his true passion in life: martial arts, karate, aikido, judo. You name it, he was practicing it. And eventually, he got pretty good at it. This ended up being an important tool that would help him later. Life would progress normally and successfully for Tanaka. He would go on to graduate from Kanagawa University, a school for law and economics, and would even go on to get married to his wife, Takiko. And that's how Koshiro would go on to live his life for the next 20 years. That was until 1985, when he, at the age of 45, like many his age, began to feel a bit unfulfilled. His youth had gone by him, and now he was working a corporate job in the middle of Tokyo. So naturally, he had a bit of a midlife crisis. But instead of going out, divorcing his wife, and buying a Corvette, he came to the conclusion he would travel to Afghanistan to join the mujahadeen in their holy war against the Soviet Union. As all of us naturally would. At least I would hope. So, background. In 1979, the Soviet Union would invade Afghanistan to help prop up a puppet communist government. Now, communist regimes, they tend to be a little atheistic. So naturally, the very religious population of Afghanistan, they weren't very big fans of that. So, a jihad, or holy war, was declared against the Soviet Union. Many warlords and militias rose up all across Afghanistan to help fight in this, and they were all collected under the loose banner of the mujahadeen. The CIA was involved, stingers were sent, and spooks, they were spooking. And Tanaka, he wanted in on the action. Being 5 years old when the Second World War ended, Tanaka never got to fight it, and this would always stay with him. In the closing days of World War II, the Soviet Union invaded the Kuril Islands in North Japan and began to occupy them. In fact, to this day, Russia still holds the Kuril Islands, and it is a massive stain on Japan and Russia's diplomatic relationship. In fact, Japan and Russia never formally signed a peace deal from the Second World War over this disagreement. So, all throughout Tanaka's life, he was hoping Japan would finally declare a war against the Soviet Union to try and get the islands back. But alas, Japan's constitution forbade it from ever taking land back offensively. So, there's a pretty good fun fact right there. You could technically make the argument that World War II never ended. I mean, it did, but you can make the argument. So, when you combine three things, that being Tanaka's fierce nationalism and hatred of the Soviets for taking the Kuril Islands, his hatred of communism, and his want to reclaim former Japanese glory, you see where we're going to. Tanaka would end up booking a flight to Pakistan in an attempt to meet up with Mujahideen leadership. Koshiro had somehow raised $10,000 at his work to bring with him to Afghanistan to give to any Afghan fighters that would accept it, but with one condition. They had to let him fight with them. Now, Koshiro had zero combat experience. But you remember how I said he was really good at martial arts? He was 6th degree black belt level good. That was very difficult to say. His plan? He was going to teach the Taliban karate, which is a sentence I never thought I was going to say. So when I was writing this script and I got to this part, I'm just sitting here imagining him in a cave with all these other guys sitting around, and they got an RPG or an IED in hand, and he's sitting there just going, wax on, wax off. I know it's not that funny. And I'm probably going to take this part out when I edit this video. Because I even said I'm not going to do the Mr. Miyagi voice. But here we are. Anyways, he traded out his business suit for a salwar kameez, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, but it's the traditional dress of mujahadeen fighters, and even grew out a matching beard. He was soon accepted into the second largest group of mujahadeen fighters, the Jamaat-e-Islam, where he quickly began instructing the members in hand-to-hand combat. But later in 1985, he finally participated in his first battle against Soviet forces. After this, Koshiro started to see himself as a martyr for Japan. He would write lamenting about how Japan's constitution and current government keeps it from going forward and fighting the communists. See, he never adopted Islam or even claimed to be fighting for it. He claimed he was following the Bushido Code. He was, in his eyes, a modern-day samurai, and the media quickly dubbed him as such, calling him the Samurai of Afghanistan. He saw a lot of parallels between Middle Eastern and Eastern cultures, and he respected how the Mujahideen believed martyrdom would send them to heaven. And he believed in that last principle so much, he always made sure to carry a spare grenade with him at all times to avoid capture. Koshiro would take a beating over the next few years in Afghanistan. He would get malaria, jaundice, kidney stones, even breaking his own foot at one point. Not to mention, on one occasion, he was almost shot in the head, saying he could feel the wind of the bullet going by his ear. And when being asked about that, his only response was, "I got a shot of adrenaline," which I think is fair to say is an understatement. The Japanese government, of course, disapproved of his actions, but they never did anything to stop him. They would just warn him every time he went to Afghanistan, like, "Hey man, this is pretty dumb and pretty dangerous what you're doing. Are you sure you want to do it?" But that didn't matter to Tanaka, and it didn't matter to a lot of his countrymen either. They saw his fight as one for freedom and bringing honor to Japan. In 1987, he would publish his memoir, Soviet Soldiers in My Gun Sight: My Battles in Afghanistan, which is a amazing title. I could never come up with a YouTube title as awesome as that. And with the publishing of his novel, he would use the proceeds to help fund the war effort. Eventually, with a little help from Uncle Sam that for sure would never come back to bite him in his ass, Afghanistan was able to kick the Russians out of their country, and they set up their own government in 1989. Tanaka's commanding officer, I'm going to butcher this name, Burhanuddin Rabbani would actually go on to become the leader of Afghanistan in 1992, all the way up until 2001, when the United States came to the conclusion, after a certain event, that the Taliban wasn't cool anymore.
That reminds me of that tragedy.
But with victory, Koshiro would return home to Japan a hero. Koshiro the hero. He would go on to speak at events and teach the world about what happened in Afghanistan, and he eventually became the General Secretary of the International Refugee Relief Committee, and would help thousands of refugees in multiple areas across the world. He actually was a big supporter of democratic Afghanistan after the fall of the Taliban in 2001. He was one of the main figures in Japan working on normalizing relations between the two nations. Koshiro Tanaka is now 85 years old, and he still works at and runs a school he founded in Japan. He said that he would like to go out in the spirit of a samurai. So, with recent events, America's piss-poor pullout of Afghanistan, us leaving all of our toys over there and all the rising tensions, maybe, just maybe, this old-timer might have one more fight in him. Okay, so personally, in my opinion, this was the most fun I've had doing the research for a video, because I had never heard of this guy. If you're watching my channel, I'm sure you've heard of the Japanese soldier who kept fighting World War II until the mid-1970s. We've all heard that story. But I've never heard this one, and to me, it's equal levels of cool. Because I never would have imagined some random Japanese businessman would go on to be a very influential mujahideen fighter. It's an incredible story, and it's just so crazy to see a guy who let his intrusive thoughts really come out in such a way. And you should too. if your intrusive thoughts or liking and subscribing to my channel. This is part of the video where I wish you, what do I even say? Hang on. I hope you enjoy whatever food you're about to eat and whatever poop you are about to poop. I'm Crate13, and I hope you have a fantastic day.